Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 203 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. I'm so glad you're with us and hope that everything's going well for you as you're studying and preparing for your bar exam. If you're taking the exam in July 2018 and you're listening to this episode as it releases, we're about 35 days until the test, so it is obviously for real. It's on, and I'll have a little bit more to say about that in just a moment. In today's episode, though, we're going to focus on an interview we did recently with a successful bar taker from February 2018. And Neisha's story is absolutely phenomenal. Neisha is an individual who took the Florida bar exam. She came from Puerto Rico. She took the exam and she failed by only 3 points. Then she took it again and she failed by only 1 point. And she made a decision at that stage that rather than keep taking the Florida exam, she'd switch to the uniform bar exam. And with our help, she took that exam in February of 2018 and she passed with flying colors, and she's a member of the DC bar. And it's a great story. I think you're going to really love hearing from Neisha. So we'll be coming to that interview in just a moment. Now, let me just say that if you're new to the podcast, we want to welcome you. We're glad that you're here with us. We come to you every Wednesday to talk all things bar exam related. And obviously, there's a lot going on these days. The spread of the uniform bar exam is obviously a big story. We're now up to 33 states and jurisdictions. But obviously, there's a lot happening just in the general bar exam world, and we want to make sure that you're up to date on all of that information as well. We provide these podcasts for you in a couple of different formats. You can watch on video by going to celebrationbarreview.com / and then enter the episode number. So for this week's episode, it's /203. And you can watch the interview and the entire podcast on video. If you prefer to listen to the podcast, you can do that on Apple iTunes, on iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. I think actually almost anywhere you can get your podcast, you'll find us. Just put in a search for the Extra Mile for bar exam takers, and all of the material will be right there for you. We also have an archive of all 203 of our episodes and counting, and you can find that on our website at celebrationbarreview.com. Click on the link at the top of the page for podcasts, and you'll find all of our previous podcast episodes along with show notes. So be sure to check that out. There's a real wealth of information there. Now, speaking of a wealth of information, each week we do a live webinar called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. This is a look at the powerful, proven way to pass. I'll be offering this webinar on Thursday, June 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 o'clock Pacific time. And it's a live opportunity to find out just what you have to do in order to pass the bar exam. We'll take you step by step through that. We'll share a lot of case studies with you, and I'll be live to answer all of your questions at the end. So we encourage you to join. It's completely free, but you do need to register and save your seat. Now, you can do that in one of several ways. Go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com /webinar. That's /webinar. Or you can register from the show notes. There's a link. Or if you're watching on the video, just scroll down to the bottom of the video page and you'll find a link there. It's completely free. If Thursday, the 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern does not work in your schedule, have no fear. All is not lost. You can actually watch an on-demand version of the same information. You'll see that button when you go to register. Just click on the on-demand version, select your date and time, and you can watch the presentation. And obviously, I don't have the opportunity to do a live Q&A in that situation, but you can send your email or send your questions right through the webinar. They'll be emailed right to me, and I'll promise to respond promptly. So either way, make sure you check it out. It's great information. It could be a huge game changer for you if you're taking the exam in February or July of 2019. Now, a special word. When we get to this stage of the year, inevitably I get people coming to this webinar who are taking the July 2018 exams, but they realize that the way they've been studying, either with the big box bar review or on their own, simply isn't working. And the truth is, I'm flattered that people would come to hear this information. We've had literally thousands of people go through this webinar. But the reality is that if you're now 30 some days to the bar exam, this is not the time for you to switch courses. It's not the time for you to suddenly decide that you're going to sign up for the July course. We're essentially sold out for our July courses, and only in the most extraordinary circumstances would I take someone new into the course at this stage. So while I appreciate that you're probably feeling a bit frantic and concerned, and I understand that, this webinar is probably not the best information for you because it's going to challenge a lot of the assumptions that you probably have about how to study, and frankly, that may just upset you more than help you. If, on the other hand, you're really thinking to yourself, you know what, I just know things aren't working and I'm feeling reasonably confident that I'm going to have to take the exam in 2019, then by all means join us. But what I want to make sure that you understand is that we're not going to be trying to help you with 30 days to go as to how to pass the July exam. That's not really our purpose of this webinar. So I'd like to be clear about that so that nobody shows up with a misguided notion of what we're going to be doing. But if you really want to know how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam, we'll show you how to do that, and we'll be delighted to talk to you about the 2019 exams. And it's hard to believe we're even talking about those tests, but there we are. So make sure you join us. Come to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar and claim your free seat. Now, the week that we're just wrapping up in the bar review is what we call the dreaded seventh week. This is a week when the disconnect between the reality of the bar exam, I mean, it looks pretty real to most of you taking the exam in July. That reality is huge, but your skill set is probably not as well developed. And so there's a disconnect between your skills and abilities and what you perceive you have to do. And during this particular week, that difference is probably the most acute. That is to say, it feels most like the exam's on top of you and you feel least prepared for it. With each day and week that comes up, you should be feeling more confident and more able to work. And the truth is, the exam doesn't feel much closer 2 or 3 weeks from now than it will to you today. So as a result, this is a week when people get really out of sorts. They get really feisty. They pick fights with everybody in their life. They're easily irritated. They're highly frustrated. Frankly, a lot of people get sick this week. We have a lot of little minor fender bender traffic accidents. All sorts of strange things happen. And it happens twice a year at about this point before the bar exam. So my staff and I are pretty well prepared for it. We know it's coming, and we don't even have to look at the calendar. We can just tell from the communication level and what's being posted in our Facebook group and what we're hearing from students that we've reached that stage. I'm telling you that because if you've been feeling kind of out of sorts this week, well, there's a good reason for it, and it does get better. Now, I recorded a video a while ago about the dreaded seventh week, and we're going to link to it in the show notes. I would encourage you, if you haven't seen that video, it's a short one, but it's a good one, go ahead and check that out. I think you'll find it helpful, or at the very least, reassuring to know that you're not crazy and you're not alone. This is a pretty common phenomenon. And if nothing's happened to set you off your game, that's awesome. That's even the best result there is. Sometimes it happens a week later, though, so be prepared. But for most people, there will be a moment or two when it feels like the whole world is crashing in around you. And that is a pretty normal experience, and it goes away, and it's good to know that as you go in. Well, having chatted a bit about those things, I wanted to turn our attention to the real focus of this week's episode, which is our interview with Neisha Serrano. Neisha is incredibly poised and articulate. She is a wonderful attorney. She graduated law school in Puerto Rico. She came to the U.S., to Florida. She worked really hard. She's just super bright, and everything went wrong for her. I mean, literally everything, as you'll hear in this interview. But she just kept fighting, kept working, kept pushing. And even when she failed by just 3 points and then by just 1 point, she refused to give up. But what Neisha did that I think is so wise is that she changed her strategy. She didn't just keep trying to do the same thing over again, but she really took a different approach. And working together, we found a different approach for her, and one that I think she's really excited about, and I think you'll be able to tell immediately when you get into our conversation. So I don't want to keep you waiting for this interview any longer. Let's go talk to a successful new District of Columbia attorney, passed the UBE in February 2018, Neisha Serrano. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers, and we are in for a treat today because this is one of the really, really wonderful, great people that I've had a chance to work with over the years. welcome to a new attorney, Neisha Serrano. How does that sound?
It feels amazing.
And it has been a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
It has. When I first met you, you were so young, and you're still pretty young. But it's been a long time, hasn't it? You've really been working at this for a long time. Yeah. You've taken now and passed the uniform bar exam in the District of Columbia, right?
Correct.
And so you're getting barred in DC?
Correct.
So counselor, how's that sound?
Amazing.
Pretty remarkable. You started law school and graduated law school in Puerto Rico, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, why don't you kind of bring people into the story and how you got from school in Puerto Rico to taking the UBE and the journey in between a little bit.
Of course. My journey started in my third year of law school that I realized I did not want to practice law in Puerto Rico. Not a lot of available careers, and there wasn't a long-term, it wasn't aligned with what I wanted long-term with my career. So I decided to take the Florida bar exam. However, in Puerto Rico, even though my law school was an accredited ABA school, we don't have the common law system. So that was the first hurdle. And I remember Jackson, during the essays, he was like, no, and it was very difficult, first of all, to understand the style, the writing style, and also understand the law, because it was different. So I think there were many layers for me in the way to get my pass. I first of all had to let go of the anxiety. I had to be more disciplined with my structure when it comes to the bar studying. That's definitely a very important component. And understand the common law and understand the writing style here in the US. Once I mastered that, I think I was fully able to be myself, feel comfortable in the studying process and writing during the bar exam, and then it happened. And of course, Jackson was instrumental in all this process.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I remember when we first started working together, I think it was probably I want to say February 2015, that exam.
Correct.
And one of the things that was happening for you early on was that you were so anxious. Do you remember that? You were so nervous. Just sitting down to write an essay was just an incredible emotional, what do I do?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that was a huge hurdle for you to have to overcome.
And I think that was one of the main components, not the only one. This exam, I totally let go of all that anxiety, and I incorporated the subliminal,
paraliminals.
Paraliminals, yeah. The paraliminals. I started doing the paraliminals. I started doing the paraliminals for a whole month before I went to bed, and I think keeping my calm, rest assured that I did my job, was key to me sitting down that day and just writing down what I've been studying for every day, even though now I have a full-time job. But I made it happen, and I think the key component, yes, the studying every day, saying no to going out, saying no to any other external influences, but also trusting that you did everything that you needed to do and you actually did it.
Yeah. And
just 2 days before, just let go. You need to relax the brain. You need to just breathe, because otherwise the anxiety, and that's what happened to me every time, got in the way and I didn't perform well. And it was an interesting story, because we would work together and I would see your work get better and better and better, and then the anxiety would start to build for you, right? Self-destructive.
Yeah. And of course there were some other things that happened. Before one of the exams, we had the Pulse nightclub shooting. That was a really horrible moment on so many levels, but for you it was really tough, wasn't it?
Yes. I had a friend that actually died there.
Yeah.
So that was tough.
And I know it's hard to even talk about that, but I remember that in the midst of all of that, you were trying to deal with the personal grief and the tragedy. And of course, here in Orlando, for all of us, it was a massive shock.
Sure.
And yet here was the bar exam just right on top of us. And there was virtually no time, at least as I think back to it now, it was almost like the shooting happened and then the bar exam within a week or two. And people were going to funerals and people were grieving and dealing with all of that. And we had a number of students who were personally impacted. Some chose not to sit for that exam because it was just so difficult. You went ahead and took the exam. that time. And that was really hard for you, wasn't it?
It was hard for me. I think throughout this process I've learned one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that if you want something, you have to do whatever it takes to get it. If you don't do whatever it takes, you never really wanted it. So that's what I always had that on my mind. I'm like, I need to make this happen, you know, and even if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be a little bit closer. And actually that's what happened. So the turning point here, and I'm pretty sure you remember that conversation. I FaceTimed you and I was, Jackson, I needed one more point to pass the MBE in Florida.
Yeah, you got a 135 and you needed a 136, which was just, I mean, at the moment it was just devastating, wasn't it?
It was crushing. I remember that FaceTime session, I was just crying because I was like, I kept going and I kept going. It was 1 point. And I'm like, I'm not going to take this as a no. I'm going to take this as I am getting closer. I cannot quit.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I tried even harder. I gave in my all. I incorporated the preliminals, all the techniques that I learned with you, and it happened. But I needed to let go and needed to relax and trust the process.
Yeah, there's some interesting things that happened along the way. Your story is really remarkable on so many levels. For a Puerto Rico law graduate to pass any bar right now is very, very difficult.
Yes.
And we've got language questions, we've got cultural questions, we've got common law questions, we've got all those different things that happen. Then, of course, we had Hurricane Maria. I mean, it's just like, what else can happen? And when Hurricane Maria hit, I'm thinking, oh my God, Nay. It's like, you know, she's under a cloud. There's just nothing that you know, it just seems like it just keeps happening and happening and happening. And yet you were very calm. I mean, in the midst of all of that. And in fact, I remember an interview you did on television, right? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And you gave an interview in your capacity, you know, not as a law student or a bar taker, but in your professional capacity as a lawyer in Puerto Rico. And it was powerful. And I saw this extraordinarily poised, talented woman who was absolutely articulate about what she was doing. And I thought, you know, if we can capture that person at the bar exam, right? We've got it. So we started thinking about how do we get you from that 1 point short in Florida? What's the strategy? So you want to explain the strategy that we came up with?
I remember one of the first things you told me was write the essays using the preliminals, meaning letting go. Just trust that it's there, your subconscious. And I'm like, no, being the anxious person, no way, that needs to be structured. I need to be like anxious and like, you know, and I think that's a mistake that a lot of bar takers we do. I mean, maybe in the stress and we want this and we kind of like just get so confused as what really works. Also, another suggestion you told me was get dressed, like dress up as if you were going to court.
And you thought it was crazy.
No way!
Yeah, you thought it was crazy.
No way! No! And it's just these no's and no's and no's. And you are someone that you know what you're doing. It's been so many years, and it was a no, but it was me sabotaging myself. And as I said before, the last time I incorporated everything. Even like every night I went to bed with my earphones, preliminals, and I can attest that as I was reading the essay questions at UBE, which were packed with like facts and different types of arguments and counter arguments, I read again and I spotted a new one. And then I read again and it's just they all came to me, but very organically. It wasn't like this. No, it was, they just kept coming. And it's because I was calm and I let it flow.
Right. And you had used photo reading, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so in the photo reading process, for those of you that don't know about photo reading, part of what happens is, as Nay was saying, it's in your non-conscious brain. And so you're reading a problem and stuff starts to pop off the page to you, doesn't it?
That's exactly what happened, Jackson. I read the first time. I'm like, okay, this essay is about this, and that. Then I started writing. I read again. Oh my God, these 3 more issues. Let me discuss. And they kept coming.
Yeah. And I think what was happening is that you were able to channel that anxiety and turn it into energy, turn it into focus. Now, the strategy that we employed outside of that was picking the jurisdiction. At some point, we just said, look, this is really nuts to keep banging your head against the Florida wall. We don't need you to do that. You need to just be barred somewhere in the mainland. So as the exams have evolved, the Uniform Bar Exam came along, and the District of Columbia has an interesting rule. You want to tell us about that rule?
Correct. Because anyways, ultimately, I wanted to practice law in the District of Columbia. I love sunny Florida. I've had a hard time coping with the weather here, but I love it here. Yeah. That said, ultimately, and I was very clear about this to Jackson, I wanted to practice law in District of Columbia. But initially, I wanted to be to have the Florida bar and then move on to DC. So if you have 133 or more in the MBE, you can transfer your MBE score, and you just sit down and take the MEE and the MPT. So I focus my study on my essays, which you very well know, it was my weak part. I needed to feel more comfortable. I needed to practice a lot of essays. So I focused and centered my studies in the MPT and the MEE.
And then you passed.
Yes.
Yes. And what did that feel like?
Oh my God, there's no way. So I was at work. They released this memo. It's gonna be available May 16 after 4 p.m. And I was refreshed. But I was at work, so once the results were available and I started scrolling down and I saw my name, all I could do was like clap really hard and just keep focused. And then I started to realize, it's just, I was shaking. I was texting everyone like shaking. It really pays off. It really pays off. It was so emotional.
Yeah. And then I got your note and I was like, oh, this is such a great moment, such a great journey. You know, the odds of passing when you're coming from Puerto Rico are so low. And then
I have friends that never passed it. Florida or any other jurisdiction.
Yeah. And so I wanted to highlight your story for a lot of reasons, the photo reading, the paraliminals, the journey itself. But I also wanted to just talk about this strategy because you were very strategic in saying, okay, look, my ultimate goal is to be able to practice law and I want to be in DC. So why don't I just go? I've got that score that I need. I can block this off, go up there and take the UBE questions, which were different than the Florida essays. It also had the MPT component, the performance test, which we felt would play better to your strength, that you had a practical experience and you would be able to take the problem and work with it. And of course, that's what ends up happening. And so now you've got that, you've got your UBE score and you're licensed and you can take that score actually some other places too, can't you?
Yes. I think also something that I want to say is the intent element. I really wanted to be here, even though I was working full time, but every day I got home and I did what I had to do. So you need to make it happen for yourself. You know, no one can put all the effort and the discipline and the work to this. You need to make it happen. Doesn't matter. You know, I had a full-time job. Sometimes I would go to bed like 3 a.m. And then get up 6 a.m. to go to work. And actually I had my doubts that this was the first time I had a full-time job and studying for the bar exam. And actually it happened. So only you are in the way, you know. It's just you and the bar exam and all you have to do in between to make it happen.
Yeah. I know your family has been really a big part of this journey for you too.
Definitely. I've had the financial, emotional support, and I think it's a blessing. You know, being a good parent is not an obligation, it's a decision. So in that sense, I've been very grateful to them. And I told them, listen, I wouldn't have been able to do this if I didn't have you guys. What
did they say when they found out you'd passed?
Oh my God. Mom was crying for 30 minutes.
I believe it.
And my dad was like, counselor. That's the other part of it. I was so happy that I was able to return all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that you are the kind of attorney that the bar needs in this country. You represent not only an underrepresented group, a voice that needs to be heard, but there's a passion about the way you work and the way that you care for your clients and the way that you care about what is going on that is really refreshing. And I think that one of the things that makes us so excited when we see a win like yours, Nay, is that we know that this is just the first plop in the pond. The ripples are going to be big for you. I mean, folks, this is somebody you're going to keep an eye on. She is going places, lots of places, because you just had that drive. I think a lot of people would have given up long before you did, right? I mean,
My mom said the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been easy to say, I just can't do it. I'm not, forget it. I'll go back to Puerto Rico. I'll just give up here. And that was never part of your discussion. Never. Even when you missed by 1 point, which I thought was really the low moment for you, because your scores had been coming up. We had been making progress.
Yeah.
We thought you were going to get over the top, and you missed by 1 point, which is so arbitrary. We're talking one question here, and that was all it would have taken. A couple more questions, and you're in all the way. And we're thinking, oh my God, now what? And that's often a decision point for people, isn't it? I mean, you have to decide.
No doubt about it, yeah.
Yeah. And so what would you say to somebody who's in your position where they've just frustrated, they just keep hitting their head against that wall, and it doesn't seem like it's changing for them?
My lowest point was that day. I still remember our FaceTime session. And I think it's a matter of how you interpret a situation in your life. Meaning, I could have said, I missed by 1 point. I'm not going to keep trying because I'll probably miss again. No. Like I said in the beginning of this conversation or this FaceTime session, I said to myself, I am devastated. I am sad. I'm exhausted. But I came all the way here, and I'm going to keep trying. I'm not going to quit. I'm not a quitter. And that point that I needed, I'm going to transform it. I'm going to do something good with it. And that something good was, this is the jurisdiction I want to be practicing in, DC. There is an opportunity for me to be here. I'm going to make it happen. Yeah. And that's what I did. And it got me to where I wanted to be. Yeah.
And I think, at the moment that you pass, what you remember, you don't remember those bad moments. You just know that it's so great, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, here it is. I've done it, right? That it is an awesome accomplishment, and it's an awesome story. What's next for you? What happens now?
Right now, I have a full-time job that I really, really enjoy. I was very blessed. DC, my dad said, Florida wasn't dear to you, but DC has been very dear to you.
Good.
It's gonna be sad for me to part ways. But I'm looking for a attorney position. I'm working right now in legal compliance, and I'm the director, so I really like it. And I've been very blessed with this job. Wow. But I'm going to move on as an attorney. And I'm working with two recruiters, so I'm very excited. But I love DC. I think I'm just biased because it's been so good, and everything has been so positive.
Yeah, DC was pretty good to me, too.
DC is amazing. I love DC. I can only say that is amazing. But yeah, next I'm going to keep fighting for whatever, I want to just, whatever wins I want to get. And it's a matter of just staying consistent, true to yourself, and just keep going, never give up.
Yeah. I think some people will wonder, how important was it to use tools like photo reading and paraliminals and taking these different steps? Can you talk to that for just a minute? Because I know that at first you kind of looked at him and you went, well, this is weird.
I was very skeptical.
Yeah, you were very skeptical. And trust me, when this woman is skeptical, she's not subtle about it at all. It's like, I just don't believe this. And then you kind of inched your way in, and then you finally just bought it all. You went all in. Yeah. What made the difference for you in feeling like it was working?
With the photo reading, I think it was, first of all, getting comfortable with the technique, understanding it, and practicing it. Once you master that, same thing. Get rid of the anxiety. Get rid of, I need to be studying. I don't need to be doing this and learning all these things because it happened to me. Master that technique, understand it, do all these things calmly, and it just cut down the study time significantly. It just makes it so much faster.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to just emphasize again, you were working full time when you passed.
Oh, yes.
And you were studying full time for some of those tries where it just wasn't happening so much. And I remember there were a couple of times where I said, Nay, you got to get out a little bit. You got to get out of your apartment. You got to go be in the world a little bit because
I wasn't maximizing my time. Now I really did.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
It definitely. No doubt about it. And the preliminals, like I said, it works. I probably wouldn't spotted any of the issues that I did the second reading if I wasn't assiduous to just 1 month listening to it before I went to bed. Yeah. Every night. And it kept me calm.
Yeah.
It really kept me calm.
That's great. So I think it's a great strategy if you're someone that's not getting through in your first state, but you've got a 133 or better on the multi-state. Look at the UBE, look at DC, because once you've got that score, DC requires a 266, which means in order to have passed that, you've now got the possibility of waving into New York, New Jersey, a whole bunch of states. I mean, you can pretty much go. Well, a lot of places. And frankly, if you ever want to come back to Florida, you can always sit for that exam again. But it would be a very different experience, wouldn't it, now that you're a member of the bar?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it was a fear, and now that's in the past.
Yeah. Any special advice that you would offer for attorneys or people who've trained outside the U.S. for whom English is not a first language? Anything in particular that you experienced or discovered in all this?
Preliminals, photo reading definitely works. Definitely. Also, read everything. Reading English. Another thing you mentioned right when we started, talk in English. You have to create an English bubble. If you keep shifting back from English to Spanish, Spanish to English, that's not good, because another thing is that I was able to attain the speed that I needed in order to write throughout all these years, because I've been talking in English, writing at the office, writing memos, doing this, analyzing statutes or legislation, and preparing reports and addressing federal offices. So all that really adds up to that speed that you need and actually understanding right away. So you need to create that English bubble. Otherwise, it's going to take way too long. You need to be able to read the question and just be quick, make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
And that works also for the MBE. You read, and it jumps off the page. Yeah. The answer, it really jumps off the page.
Yeah, it does. It really does, folks.
It does.
And I'm thinking back to when we first started working. Your English, it was always good, but it just got spectacular. You just, and again, this is Nay. She just threw herself in. She said, "Okay, I'm going to do it," and the English bubble and her everything got better. And so, I think it's really great advice. And so I appreciate you sharing that.
Meditation also.
Yeah. That was a big part too for you, right? Using the holistic meditation, because with all the things that were happening, and maybe you could talk for just a minute, when Hurricane Maria hit, and obviously the devastation in your home, and the extraordinary, everything, right? And here's a bar exam again. Did the meditation help center you? Because how do you kind of, and you'd already had, I suppose in a weird way, because of the pulse shooting, you'd already experienced that.
It's been quite a journey, yes.
Unreal. Was that a time when you found yourself using meditation?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It helped me just relax, leave everything there, and then the stress is there. You don't stress when you're studying. When you're studying, you focus.
Yeah.
You leave the stress at the gym, or when you go to the meditation, or before I go to bed. Oh, I know I'm going to listen to the preliminals. I'm going to go to bed and have a good night's rest.
Yeah, that's good.
Another thing and I never did this all the other times, I was very stressed the night before the test. I didn't sleep enough. I actually slept like 10 hours the day before.
Really?
And I was so rested. It was crucial.
That's great. And now, see, and I've been waiting like years to say this. Neisha would say to me, "I can't go out. My friends are texting me to go out, and I can't go out. I have to study." But now, counselor, you can go out. How's that feel?
It feels good. It feels
pretty good. Yeah, it feels pretty good. I bet.
Feels
well,
good.
I am so deeply appreciative of you for doing this interview. I know, I can tell you right now, as we're doing this today, I know that this interview is going to just explode because your story is wonderful. It's frustrating and depressing and disappointing, and yet it's a real Rocky story. I mean, it's a real overcoming all these barriers and getting there, and to see the smile on your face and to see how happy you are, to just know.
I wasn't like this all the other times, right?
No, we didn't have these conversations. We had mostly tears. And to see you now like this is such a wonderful thing. And I know that will lift and inspire and encourage so many people. So I really appreciate that you would be open enough to share your story.
My pleasure.
But I also know, and I say this with absolute conviction, that you are going to be a real credit to our profession. You're going to be that kind and gentle member of the bar that I talk about. And I am so deeply proud that we had anything to do with that at all. And that I can say that I've been your teacher and mentor and friend is one of the great joys of my life. So thank you so much for being with us today. Great. And to all of our audience, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did.
Yes.
And I know you all join me in congratulating Nay. All right, everybody. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Our interview with Neisha. It's wonderful, isn't it? And she's just so much fun and so full of energy and life. And it's just great to see that success. And I hope that that's been encouraging to you if you've had the chance to watch or listen to her today. You know, I get so many comments from people that have watched our interviews with successful students talking about how inspirational it is and how encouraging it is. And so I really want to thank all of the people who've allowed me to interview them. I think we're now getting close to 65 interviews in the last couple of years. And it's really wonderful of these folks like Neisha to share their story and to be so transparent. So I hope you found it helpful as well. Now, before we say goodbye for this week, I just want to remind you our free webinar, How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam, will be on Thursday, June 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you register at celebrationbarreview.com/webinar or here on the video page or on the show notes for the audio podcast. Well, I hope everybody has a great study week. I hope the dreaded 7th week doesn't get you or it doesn't get you too badly. And we'll be back to you again next Wednesday as we continue to count down towards the July 2018 bar exam. And we look forward to seeing you on the pass list along the extra mile. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.